things that the Buddha frequently talked about was Yoniso Manasikara and Yoniso Manasikara. So the meaning of those is to direct one's attention, direct one's mind, to fundamentally to principles, to fundamentals of things. And he didn't recommend not paying attention to principles. And so when he would elaborate on this, on what is Yoniso Manasikara and what is Yoniso Manasikara, he said, like, not giving attention to principles takes the form of who was I in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? Who am I in the present? What am I in the present? How am I in the present? Who am I? Who will I be in the future? What will I be in the future? How will I be in the future? So sort of seeing things through the lens of oneself, one's ego, one's association with these the things that one's identified with. And it never tends to turn out to, it never leads to freedom. It never leads out of this sense of self if the lens through which everything is seen is oneself. Never get to the end of ego when one is constantly picking up the recognitions of ego, or seeing through the lens of ego, seeing through the lens of self, seeing through this lens of me and cravings and desires, concepts of the self. And when he described a Yoniso Manasikara, or Yoniso Manasikara, directing one's attention to principles, the fundamentals, described, for example, one sees pain as it actually is, sees the origin of pain, the roots, the causes of pain, what the causes of pain as they actually are. Sees the way out of pain, or the ending of pain as it actually is, and all the steps, all the parts, all the fundamentals that lead one out of the cycle of pain and suffering. When we look at just pain as it is, as opposed to my pain, as opposed to what this pain means to me, once one is identified with the pain or the pleasure, one no longer sees it as it actually is. You move from an assumption that's already off. And so, in the looking for an end to pain, one carries with it that assumption of there's me there, there's mine there, I need to survive. I need to protect myself. I need to exist. And once that assumption is laid down, it's very hard to undo it. It's hard to go back and extricate it, because that's the whole motivation, is the sense of craving for existence, survival, and protection. But if one just sees the pain as it is, it can start to see it for what it is, accept it for what it is, experience it as it is. And then one can see more clearly what's driving it, what's the cause of it. One sees that pain through a sense of self, then inevitably it assigns the cause of that pain as something external to oneself, something not caused by oneself. Because the motivation is to protect oneself and to get rid of the pains. And that assumption kind of builds with it this sort of protection mechanism for the self. It carries with it the assumption that that pain is not caused by myself. It's external somehow. When one can experience just that pain as it is, whether it's the pain of birth or aging and death, or grief or mourning or pain or suffering, or tension, whatever the physical, emotional, social, any type of pain that one's experiencing, the more one just actually sees it from this objective observation, one can accept that it's craving that's driving this. It's my own attachment to this body. It's my own attachment to my social circle, or it's my own craving for sensual pleasure. That's what's setting me up for this pain. If I hadn't been born into a body, I wouldn't be experiencing the pain of having a body. If I hadn't gotten attached to these loved ones, I wouldn't have to grieve when they pass, separated. So bit by bit, one starts to accept that reality that It's my own craving, it's my own attachment, it's my own kind of impulses that are driving this cycle of pain. And then the way out becomes more clear. That it's just through letting this pain arise and pass away, letting this impulse arise and pass away, and understanding it's only leading me to a painful place. It's looking for pleasure, but it's only leading me to pain. And so bit by bit we start to take actions in body, speech, and mind that are moving away from that, following those impulses, following those attachments, following that identification process that happens rooted in craving. But it all began from that, the fundamental relationship to one's experience through the lens of this is me and this is mine, or through the lens of this isn't really me, this isn't really mine, this is just an experience that's arising and passing away. And that there are causes and there are results. And through seeing the causes more and more clearly, see the way out. I can start to make progress on abandoning the causes and coming to the end of that cycle. And that goes all the way through one's experience. Initially, it goes all the way through that noble eightfold, 8-part path. That you could say Yoniso Manasikara is just another way of, another aspect of right view. If right view, as in the Buddhist sense of it, is these Four Noble Truths, that pain, the roots of this painful cycle that we're in is based in our craving, and through abandoning that craving, we can experience the way out. Yoniso Manasikara is just seeing through the lens of principles as opposed to through the lens of self. And then once one sees that, the whole rest of the path falls in place. If those Four Noble Truths, if that role of craving and desire and attachment and identification in our pain and our suffering isn't clear, then the whole rest of, there's a lot of pieces there that might be useful in one way or another, but they don't necessarily all fall into place, and there's no reason why they're all presented together. But if seen in that context of these are all just tools to set ourselves free from the cycle of identification and ego and self and desire and sensuality and identification, then each tool can be picked up and used for its intended purpose. You can pick up renunciation and use it as a way to be free, have a simpler life, have an uncomplicated life, have a calm, balanced life, even when sometimes renunciation can lead to a less comfortable life, less, sometimes even more painful life. But it's not, it's in sending us to set ourselves free from that pain. The purpose of renunciation is to be free of the cycle of pain. Is to actively not pursue the pleasures of the body, the pleasures of the senses that we don't have very much control over. The more addicted we are to those senses, those pleasures of the senses, the more complicated our life becomes, because more and more of our life becomes about pursuing and maintaining and preserving and protecting those pleasures of the senses. And before we know it, there's no time to look inwards, and there's no time to attend to what's going on at the level of our intention. The other side of right intentions, right resolution, is the abandoning any resolutions or intentions of hostility or cruelty. And so once we realize that the way out is through abandoning the things of the world, not through trying to gain, accumulate, protect the things of the world. The more we start just consciously moving away from that field, this material world and all the pleasures and pains that go along with it. So we don't look for the pain of the world, we don't look for the pleasure of the world. We know that the real story is happening at the level of our craving, of our abandoning of a craving, of our ignorance, of our wisdom. That the main, the origin of the whole story and the central progression of this story and cycle of birth and aging and death and pain and suffering is all happening inside ourselves. So the less we get distracted in the world, the better. And we do whatever due diligence is necessary to communicate and maintain relationships and care for the body and do the needful. But inside it becomes more and more clear that the real story is happening at the level of our craving and our abandoning of craving. And so more and more we give attention to that. We move towards that. And we stop sort of spending time pursuing the things of the world. And there are many benefits to that. There's more time and space and fewer complications. Even if you can't get rid of all of the time necessary to maintain the body and maintain do the needful with respect to the world. But one minimizes it and spends more and more time looking at what's the quality of my intention. And similarly, one looks at one's physical action and makes sure that at least at the level of killing, of stealing, of sexual wrong action, one's not doing any knowing harm at any of those three levels of wrong bodily action. It's not killing even insects, even any living being. It's not stealing anything. It's not having sex where it will hurt or harm someone. People's relationships. And similarly, at the level of speech, attempting to only speak words that are true, that are not divisive, that are not coarse, and then they're not idle, that serve some purpose, some larger purpose for people, for their well-being. With right livelihood, most elaborated form of right livelihood is that where one's abandoned all the wrong livelihoods that involve killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, wrong speech, but also wrong livelihoods that for a monastic would involve all sorts of superstition or fortune telling, political fortune telling, weather fortune telling, astrological predictions and that sort of thing. And also just worldly things that involve trying to accumulate more and more for myself. And so as one's livelihood is getting more and more pure as well, it's just an increasing refinement of one's morality. It's creating more and more space and dedication towards trying to maintain a more and more pure intention, and moving away from trying to control the world or preserve the comforts of the body, the pleasures of the body. And one's also moving towards trying to be putting forth conscious effort to come out of unwholesome qualities. Inevitably they arise until one's perfected, but things like greed or hostility, agitation and worry, sluggishness and sleepiness, indecision or doubt. These are all different aspects. So greed and hostility have to do with either lusting after the world or wanting to destroy or harm the world. So it's fundamentally outwardly directed, and in one way it's trying to becoming infatuated with the world and fixating on it. On the other, it's obsessing over it in a negative way and generating hostility. So both of those create this pain and burning inside. In the case of greed, it's a sort of unsatiable desire. You experience the pleasure of the world and then it's gone, and one picks right up, pursuing a new desire for something of the world. It's a sight or sound or smell or taste or touch. And with hostility, it's usually born of pain and a resentment, and anger and cruelty. Inside there's pain, and when one's fixated on the external and be proximate external cause of that pain. One generates this anger or hostility towards the world. But both of those are sort of barriers or hindrances or blockages from being able to see ourselves, see our intention. They shut us out from what's going on inside because they pull us out to fixating on the external. With agitation and worry, so with hostility, one tries to generate as much compassion as possible, as much kindness as possible towards oneself, towards others, towards all beings. It doesn't inherently matter. It's the quality of compassion that offers this sort of soothing experience inside ourselves. And when we get infatuated and greedy and lustful for the world, it's like trying to see those things as they truly are, seeing them in their constituent parts, seeing them in their arising and passing away nature. Seeing their inevitable passing, this deterioration, decomposition, dissolution. And in that, seeing those things that we're infatuated by, we're craving for, we're greedy for, and seeing them for what they really are, and decomposing them into their constituent parts, earth, water, fire, air. They sort of lose their solidity and their beauty, just are what they are, just material elements come together. Characteristics that have composed for a moment and then fallen apart. And in that falling apart, they dissolve. There's nothing left to hold on to. We can see the futility of trying to hold on to them or preserve them. And somewhere along that process of dissecting the thing that we're infatuated with, we lose our infatuation. We stop becoming infatuated with things. We stop seeing it as a beautiful, shiny whole, and it becomes all of these characteristics, these elements, these broken apart parts. And then as we see agitation or worry arise, it's like it's an overstimulation, excess of energy, as opposed to sluggishness and sleepiness. It's like an under insufficient energy, insufficiency of energy. And so depending on where we are in that scale, we'll either make a priority of calming down and settling if we're experiencing agitation and worry. Or we make a priority of generating more energy and staying awake, staying present, staying alert, staying aware, staying conscious, and even generating light if it's able to, one's able to generate it. And with the sort of the doubt or indecision, one just needs to remind oneself of like, okay, these are things that are wholesome: kindness, compassion, morality, generosity, renunciation, abandoning craving. These are unwholesome: hatred, anger, infatuation, greed, agitation, worry, sluggishness, sleepiness, craving, identification, delusion. The more clear one is on what's wholesome and what's unwholesome, the more that becomes a rubric to be able to see the way forward. If one's unclear on what's wholesome and what's unwholesome, what's skillful and what's unskillful, then the way forward is always very confusing. One can see the long-term effects, that certain types of actions, whether they're wholesome or not, whether they're pleasurable or not, lead to our long-term well-being and welfare. And another set of actions, which might be pleasurable or painful, lead to our long-term detriment. And the more clear we are on which of those aspects lead to our long-term happiness and peace and pleasure and calm and settledness and unification and freedom, the more the paradigm for making decisions, the paradigm for knowing the way forward becomes clearer. It is tractable action. If we know both options are wholesome, then we can take either one. If we know both options are unwholesome, we should abandon both. If we know one is to our long-term well-being and one option is to our long-term harm, disappointment, pain and suffering, and then it becomes obvious which way to go. And the result of abandoning those blockages, those obstructions, those hindrances, is that as we abandon them, each one of those types of energy movements or impulses like leads us in a different direction away from steady, calm, peace, unification. So by abandoning all of those 4 or 5, kind of the absence of those, there might still be a subtle tightness from the sense of self, but as one is able to calm and settle and appreciate the feeling of well-being, the feeling of being free from at least those unwholesome states. So that opens up a possibility of this wholesome sense of deep happiness. And the more familiar we get with that experience of deep happiness that just comes from being free of unwholesome states, the better. because that's the whole, what opens up the whole rest of the path. The whole way to freedom, paving the way for concentration, the psyche, and makes release possible. Because the quality of that deep happiness is very calm and still and balanced and unified, or it's beginning to be unified. It's not going out anymore, it's not getting thrown up through agitation, and it's not sinking out of depression. It's just still and balanced and awake. It's that deep happiness that comes from being free of unwholesome states, calm mind, relaxed body. It can turn into joy and pleasure and relaxation, unification. With a basis of release. One can find a sense of unification, of concentration in an external sheer force of will way, but it's dangerous, because when one just attains unification through effort and striving alone, normally the base hasn't been purified, the intention hasn't been purified, and so it doesn't always lead to wholesome outcomes. It doesn't lead to freedom. But if one has this deep happiness that comes from abandoning unwholesome states, abandoning unskillful states, then it does turn into joy and pleasure and peace. And the quality of that joy and pleasure is that they come through release. They're arising out of release of at least the sense doors, the sight, sound, smells, taste, touch. As the mind stills, it withdraws from the thoughts and the mental movements as well. And so that deep happiness that comes from wholesomeness, it naturally turns into this awareness of joy and pleasure in the body, seeing the attachment to the body, seeing the holding on to the body, seeing the holding on to the psyche, even to the subconscious mind, and to eventually see that we're doing that, and a capability of being able to start to release those things. so as we're developing abandoning these unwholesome states and developing these wholesome states, there's an increasing remembrance of what's going on in our body, our mind, our sensations, our psyche, and all of the qualities that are being generated by the psyche. Qualities of phenomena, characteristics of phenomena. So one can see the impermanence of one's body, of one's feelings, of one's psyche, of the different states or qualities that it has. And see they're fading away, rising and passing away. One can experience their cessation as it is happening. All of the experiences all the way through the body. See the qualities that are arising and passing away inside one's psyche as well. That experience of both unification and also a complete presence and remembrance in one's experience. And a remembrance of the impermanence of phenomena, impermanence of our body, impermanence of sensation, impermanence of different states of the psyche, different impermanence of the different phenomena we're interacting with. With that impermanence is we see that we can't hold on to any of it. We can't hold on to the sights, the sounds, the smells, the taste, the touch, the mind, the seeing, the hearing, the smelling, the tasting, the touching, the mind and the phenomena. We can't hold on to the recognitions or the sensations that arise in response to them. And so we relinquish them one by one. The seeing, the hearing, the smelling, the tasting, the touching. Sight, sound, the smell, the taste, the touch, the mind, phenomena. And in releasing each one, we slowly move towards unbinding ourselves from those characteristics. In that unbinding, another aspect of that unbinding is as craving arises and we see that it's leading us towards pain, that we abandon it, we don't follow it, we don't identify with it, or the object that it wants. We slowly move farther and farther away from that craving. It seems less and less believable in its delusion that this object is going to make us happy. That we can find some sense of self in this material world, or this sensation, or this recognition, or this perception, this form. So there's both of those happening at the same time, through seeing the impermanence and painful nature of things, and that those things aren't me or mine, my soul. It's coaching ourselves out of the assumptions that have set craving in motion. It's seeing what's the belief structure that craving has adopted, and understanding that it's not true. Understanding that it's the opposite of true. It thinks it's leading us towards pleasure, but it's actually driving the binding to the cycle of pain. And the deepest assumption that is built into that craving is the assumption of me or mine. It's relating to all of the things we experience as me or mine or my soul or myself. And the more it sees the fallacy of that assumption, the more the psyche, because it's the psyche that's really being pulled out by craving, the more the psyche doesn't want to keep doing that, the more it connects the dots. It sees where this is going. It's only leading towards more pain and suffering. It doesn't want to keep doing the cycle anymore. It doesn't want to keep getting wrapped up in the cycle of pleasure and pain. And so that's the experience of freedom comes from that knowing, that knowledge of things as they are, of where craving's going, of how when one looks at the reality of nature, that it doesn't support the concept of an ego or a self. It only is a rising and passing away phenomenon that is always slipping out of our finger. And the freedom comes from letting go. That any freedom that comes from controlling things that are essentially beyond our control is only a temporary freedom. And true freedom can only come if it's based in release and relinquishment of anything that has the nature to arise and pass away, anything that has the nature of being unstable, subject to change, painful. people have any comments or questions.